Hi, it's Emily and Kathleen back with another lunchtime mindset half hour. And today we have Byron Thompson with us, who is just the most wonderful Southern gentleman. And I have not met Byron before in person, but I have had the pleasure of masterminding on some calls with Byron. And if there's somebody that is always willing to give a hand and wanting to help others, it's Byron. And he just has this really wonderful way about him. So, Byron, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here. Kathleen, I guess we've known each other for almost a year now online, and I was able to meet Emily at an event back in February, and I just fell in love with her. She's just awesome, and I'm really honored to be here.
Thank you so much, Byron, and I was so blessed to meet you at that event. You are truly a Southern gentleman, and being able to begin to engage with you more online after that event has been pure pleasure, total pleasure. And knowing what I do know about you, you are such an inspiration. You are such an amazing role model for our viewers. And I am so pleased to join Kathleen in sharing you with the world, because you have an amazing and not utterly unique, but a very strong story to share, one that will inspire and give hope. So by all means, if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit of your story with us so we can come to know you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, what part do you want me to go over? I kind of grew up in the model Ozzie and Harriet home. Mom and dad, brothers, we all got along. We were very affectionate. We all loved one another. And when I was about 11 years old, long story short, so to speak, I had an older brother get killed in a car accident. And then in 2000, I had a younger brother commit suicide. So this real sort of picturesque household kind of come to a screeching halt. And it's something that is certainly derailed me at the time. And then 4 years, almost to the day that my younger brother died, my father passed away. And I've got some videos out there that tells the complete story. But it was tough. I had a actual physical nervous breakdown after my dad died, but there was just something in me that said you just can't quit. You got to keep going. And somewhere in there, I found a little bit of grace and started sort of working on myself and pulling myself kind of out of that situation. And things have been good. Things have trucked right along. It's been pretty cool story to tell sometimes. I don't like to talk about it a whole bunch because it's kind of sort of the dark days, but it's been a lot of fun to share with some people about it.
Yeah, I can completely understand. I lost my husband to suicide as well 16 years back, and have had to deal with a lot of that darkness, depression, and pulled myself out of that as well to raise. I had 3 young children at the time, 7, a 5, and an 18-month-old. So I too understand that, and it isn't something that I totally like to share, but as you say, on occasion it is a grace-filled conversation to have with people. It's very helpful to people on occasion. So we need the courage and we need the strength to be able to share that.
Yeah, and it's sort of funny, and not to get too off track here, because I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but I see a lot of information and posts and opinions since what happened to Robin Williams recently, and I it's so strange because the dynamic of that type of situation is so varied and so different that I don't think any of them are wrong, and I don't think they're all right either. And I have not voiced an opinion at all, having gone through a suicide in the family, I can tell you this, regardless what anybody says, there's a whole lot more questions than there ever is answers in those situations. So I have sort of just kept quiet and watched everybody else talk about it, just to be honest with you. So, and I think even people who are touched personally, their situation is so unique that their insight is only so valuable to someone else's situation. Other than maybe some principles of living your life afterwards, as far as realizing that personal development and you still have responsibilities beyond that situation. So anyways, we don't have to go down that road, but that's kind of where I was at on that one. It's been on my mind because of the recent event. So anyways, maybe that's the reason I brought it up.
Yeah, I totally get that, and it has been on mine, and I think there aren't too many of us that haven't been touched at some level by suicide, either very closely or distantly. And so you're right, it's definitely in the air, so to speak. And but the grace that comes out of it, Byron, you and I both know that in that circumstance of facing death, we do some very deep pondering, wondering, and that brings us into God's realm. That brings us close to God, and when we move close to God, God moves close to us, and then grace begins to enter in, and it's a very grace-filled, interesting ride from that point on. And I'd love to pass that over to you just like that.
Well, the thing is that just speaking on that, and when I tell that story, it's really, the end result is the point of the story is that there are dark days and there are times where it just doesn't seem to be working right, and there are people that walk around you every day that have difficult things happening to them, and whether it's death of a loved one or not, it doesn't make their situation any less important. But the biggest part of that is if you decide, and I think that's what happened to me, is the day I realized that I had a choice in where and what and how and when, and was probably the biggest day of my life. And so when I talk to people, I talk to them in that context. Look, you can't turn it all around in one day, but you can change the direction in one day. And I can remember the very, very moment. It was so dark, and just I was so upset and angry. I had anger issues, just internal, that I couldn't cope with. I couldn't put them out. I couldn't. Even when I heard someone's message that was meant to help, it felt like it burned me. I was just so upset. But you guys probably have heard me talk about Jim Rohn a lot, but he's got about a 7-minute segment where he talks about, the day that you get fed up, the day that you can't take it anymore can be the most powerful day of your life. And, it doesn't sound that profound, but the first time I heard it was when I was kind of in that scraping the bottom part of my life, and it just it rang true, and so it just turned everything around. And so I always tell people, if you have a message to share it. Don't hold it back, because you never know. There's going to be somebody who you didn't think was listening or cared or anything of that nature, and you might just snatch them out of a hole. It's a pretty powerful thing. Mr. Rohn's been dead for years, but he saved my life by that little 7-minute YouTube clip that I come upon. It's just strange how those things work. So, my opinion is, it can look really bad sometimes, but you can make a choice, and you can be the next guy to help the next guy, when you make that choice. So.
To be an angel among us. Yes.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Absolutely true. So, Byron, I understand that in the recent past, you've had a shift in your career direction. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
No, somebody got a notification.
Sorry.
That's okay. I have well, let me start back a little bit. I've always worked for myself independently, and I have a hobby, and just from my reputation as being a good at what I did, I was offered a high-level sales position inside the industry that is sort of my hobby, and so I took it, and needless to say, I'd done really, really well at it. But in March of this year, I got a letter that said, thanks but no thanks, and you're no longer needed and you're terminated. And I had given up, my business and things to go to work for this company, and then they just sort of discarded me after 2.5 years. And so I lost a significant income all at once without sort of any warning at all. In fact, they sent me a UPS letter. They didn't even call me. I got home from on a Friday. I had to travel with this job, and I got home on a Friday. There was a UPS letter sitting on the counter that had been overnighted, and I opened it up, and it had a separation notice in it. So, so yes, that is quite a change in career direction.
But now you have decided to do your own thing now, right?
Yeah, the thing is, I'd always been sort of independent in the past, except for one stint where I was working for a corporation. But for the most part, I've always worked for myself, even when I was very young. And when this happened to me, the discussion was not, of course, you have that discussion with your spouse and your family, you know what I mean, immediately. What are we going to do? Let's make plans. And the immediate discussion with me and my wife was not to go get employment or not. It was, do I give up my power to someone else again? Do I allow someone who I might not trust or agree with to have in their hand my future and my financial goals? Can they just discard me again? And the answer to that was no. I just wasn't willing to accept that form of living ever again. I mean, even people that I know that have secure jobs, in the back of their mind, they have this fear that they're going to be discarded. And the problem is they're generally discarded when companies aren't hiring you anymore, whether it's a certain age or skill level or all this stuff. And we just decided I'm not going to do that ever again. So I'm going, I decided to open my own company and start my own business, and it's an online business, and do some other things. And I just sort of, what we were talking about before we went on air, sort of burned the ships on that one. I'd actually gotten several offers, and I just turned them down because I felt like they were going to interfere with my best client, which is me.
That's a great way to look at it, though. I know several people that are, they're entrepreneurs, and they just look at themselves as they're unemployable.
Yeah, and that's what kind of happened to me, Kathleen. This company, and I worked for a company in the archery industry. They built archery products, and I covered 5 states. And when they made sort of a change from the norm, and they hired people to represent the regions of the company, and the president of the company he was kind of a guy that was sort of scared of other individuals. He had always managed situations, never really people, and it kind of come through. But he hired a lot of people out of the industry, and what that meant was when there was problems or situations or things of that nature, he could talk over their head about it, and they would just sort of accept it. Because they didn't know any better. Ignorance in the form of they didn't know, not ignorance in the form of they chose not to know, if that makes sense. Yeah. But I had been involved in as a hobby sort of in this industry for years and years and years, and I knew more about the products than the guy at the company designing the products. And if anybody knows me, you'll know that I'm not rude, but I will speak up when and tell you how I feel. So he, from what I understand now from talking to people still with that company, I was on the hit list from from right after the time I got hired, because he did not like being questioned or being disagreed with or any of that sort of thing. So and that he's represented himself well by the way he terminated me, because he just would not talk to me personally. And so that situation cost me the job. And so I realized that, borrowing a term from one of my good friends, Jimmy Davis, I'm psychologically unemployable. Because, I have that entrepreneur spirit. I love to make things happen. And what happens is, if I'm in an employee situation, inevitably I'm going to make someone angry. Either they're insecure with their superiority, or they're insecure with their position, or they feel like if they're questioned, they're threatened. I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm used to dealing with independent people, and when you deal with independent people, I can prescribe something for their business like a doctor does, and they can either take it or not. But there's no, you know what I mean? I've come close, but I've never fired myself. So I'm a pretty good boss to work with. You know what I mean?
Have you ever quit working for yourself?
So just coming to that realization that there's a reason why, I will, in every time I've ever taken a job with a corporation, I have shot up quickly because I'll just outwork people. But there's always a ceiling where I'm going to meet someone that's threatened or not like it, or you're too opinionated, or whatever the case may be. And so I've found that out over and over and over again. So at this point, why invest that much energy and time into other people, other people's enterprise, when you can invest it in your own? That's just the way I feel. And it's not right for everybody, but it certainly is right for me.
And I think, Byron, that may very well be a great takeaway for our viewers, that if they are encountering that themselves, and I have, by the way, my last position was somewhat eliminated under the same kind of circumstances, although I was told face to face. But again, it is just that degree of entrepreneurship, that leadership, or that inner strength of that we have acquired this wisdom, we've acquired this experience, and we're really striving to give into the enterprises that we're involved in. And sooner or later, we are going to encounter a power struggle, and that will result in in the door, being shown the way to the door, if there's not room enough at the top, or if that individual doesn't have the heart or the mindset to be able to share some of that power, some of that leadership role, if you will, what have you. But it sounds to me like that's a great takeaway, so folks can realize, hey, well, maybe that's the entrepreneurial spirit. Maybe I am called to go off on my own.
Well, and you know this already, Emily. I mean, I'm an incessant reader, and I study. One of the best things I ever did was start reading books that had nothing to do with what I do. Reading about successful people and in other areas and genres and in other walks of life. And one of the things I found, like ultra successful people, you look at Mark Cuban, or you look at, and he's a tech guy, he made his billions in the tech industry, and then Sam Walton, who built Walmart. Both of them readily admit to you that they just don't know everything, but they hired smart, intelligent people and then let them do their job. They were never, ever, ever threatened by a talented person. And they hired these people knowing that once they showed how talented they were probably going to move on. But if you read Sam Walton's book, Made in America, he makes a huge point about hiring good, talented people and then letting them express those talents. Now, generally speaking, though, 90% of your quote-unquote bosses do not realize this. They're so scared of their own positions and their own security that if anybody shows a talent, leadership, or something, they get sort of scared, and that's the way they react. That's just the way it is. 80-20 rule applies to everything in life. 80% of your leaders are not going to be very good. Authority does not mean leader, right? And 20% of them are going to be pretty good. If you're fortunate to get under one of those 20%, man, they can really teach you a lot. But you know, it doesn't last long. So.
Kathleen, do you have a question for Byron?
You know, so at this point, it's just, I think the thing for viewers is to realize what power that you actually have within and what strength that you can pull if you believe in yourself.
Yeah, you know, and we talk about mental breakthroughs, and I always knew I was smart. I had put in so much time and energy and blood, sweat, and tears into the sales business for years and years and years. And, you know, it took a mentor of mine to redirect me. This happened in March where, you know, I was talking about doing this sort of thing with a program or that sort of thing with a program, and this mentor said, you know, he just kind of said, Byron, you're a moron. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And because I had talked a good game, and I was actually going to promote their product and system, and I'm going to concentrate on your system and promote it, and that's how I'm going to make some money. And, you know, it was just this big, well thought out plan. And the response was, you're an idiot. I don't want you promoting my stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he, you know, he finally come around and he says, Byron, you don't even realize how much, you know, when I listen to you talk, you've got it. You need to be promoting you. And he said, that's the biggest challenge I have with my mentoring students is 90% of them do not realize what they have that's valuable that they can share. And he said, and you're that guy. And so it just, you know, in over a weekend, I had this huge shift in just the way I felt because I had a mentor, and I think mentorship is so very important, who just sort of pulled the curtain back and pointed out some things. And, you know, most people that I meet that are truly passionate and have big hearts and you know, they have a humble spirit, so it's very hard for them to say, I'm this or I'm that. It's easy for them to tell other people that they've got it, but it's hard for them to really come to grips with greatness themselves. And that was one thing that my mentor did. He says, it's okay to be good at something.
Kathleen, are you hearing him?
Yeah, it reminds me of, I heard a leader speak just last week. I was listening to his thing, and I think most people don't realize that they are the most important product. It's the people. It isn't, you know, thinking of various things out there. It isn't the shampoo. It isn't the weight loss product. It isn't that. Those are all commodities that you can share with other people. But the real product is the person.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think, Byron, that you're shaking us up because just we stepped out in our place in this space because we realize exactly that. It is, we're coming into being. We're recognizing that we do have our own inner power and our own influence, and Kathleen and I are so much on the same page, and we're just coming into that awareness and that knowledge. And it isn't about promoting another product. It's about promoting people. It's about even, this is not about self-promotion, but coming into being to who you sense or have an inkling that you are, and you're just giving yourself the permission to go forward into that person you're becoming. And so some of us with the humble spirit and all, sometimes we hold ourselves back. That's an excellent, both of you two, excellent points you both made.
Well, you know, and I don't want to get too, I don't want to insult anybody, but there was several people when I started in this space that I viewed pretty lofty, and I would consume some of their products, and the products were just fantastic. And then on an occasion or two, I was able to meet them personally, and you know, kind of hang out and talk casually and sort of that sort of situation, and I come across leaving thinking, well, they're not nearly as smart as I thought they were. That, you know, they don't have anything special that I don't have, and so and that was not an arrogant statement. That was just in my mind being very practical about, well, okay, you know, they have had tremendous success. They've shared what they knew. And then after meeting them and talking to them and getting a good register on the situation, I can do the same thing. And it's just not, it's just, they're not super special, you know, they're just people, and they just decided to use the knowledge they had to create something. And so, you know, that's one of the turning points in me just sort of doing what I'm doing. And then I put that into action, and I did some consulting with a couple of people in the home-based business industry, and I found that teaching came naturally. I found that I could sort of decipher things that they couldn't see themselves, and so far, you know, they've all produced great results, and it's just been amazing. So it's a lot of fun, and it's you know, once you kind of find your niche and you kind of get your game, you know what I mean? You feel more at home than you feel doing things outside of your outside of what you truly feel like you can do. You know.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's coming across clearly or not. But.
Yeah, I think it is, Byron, and to solidify that, you know, I was listening to Lisa Grossman last night. I think she's very special, and she's just so real. And one of her points was that the first time that she ever got up onto a stage, you know, she thought there was some secret thing to it, you know, some mystique or whatever. And she said, you don't become a different person. You're the same person that was sitting in that chair, but now you've just gotten up onto the stage. And she's maintained that humbleness and gratitude for people, and that feeling that it's just that you can do it. That, you know, my encouragement would be to anybody out there to start believing in themselves. And
well, you know, I've got a very simple success formula, and you know, it's so easy. First of all, find the right mentor. And what I mean by that is, as you progress in business and life, your mentors are going to change, and that is okay. Once a mentor does not really lead you in the direction you need to lead, they're not a bad person. They're just ready to help somebody else, and you need to move on.
absolutely.
And then you can find another mentor. The second part to that is, a lot of people say it, but the truly successful people live it, and that is have a serve first mentality. I've had so many doors open to me that give me access to some real leaders in this industry. And the way that I got that door open was doing things for them. You know, I believe opportunistic eyes see opportunity where other people don't see opportunity if they truly want it. And I've seen some situations where I could reach out to some of these leaders and just help them. Just they were asking, and for them it was minor things. You know, it was little bitty things or stuff that wasn't that important. They just needed help. So I jumped up. Hey, I'll do it. I'll help. I'll just, you know, I'll spend my time taking care of that for you. And just through one relationship that I built with one of my current mentors, I have solid real-world access to 3 or 4 really big leaders in this industry, and I can literally send them a text and get an answer. Now, I don't abuse it, because that's the next step. I always am respectful that they charge for what they do most of the time for the mentorship. But the serve first attitude has brought me places that if I was just out to get what I could get, and don't get me wrong, I knew there was an end game, but I also knew I needed to put a little skin in that game before I got that, you know. But reach out and help, and sort of have that servant first mentality.
That is excellent, and so those are great words to kind of wrap up our time. We are coming.
Is it over already?
Yeah, it just amazes me how fast a half hour goes, but we do really want to respect our viewers' lunchtime limitations, if you will.
Absolutely.
But let me just ask you, and I know we're running over a little bit, but you mentioned that you do have your success formula, and you gave us really kind of 2 points, the mentors and how they may change over time, and to serve first, have that mentality. Is there anything else that perhaps you didn't get to on that success formula?
You know, and this is the one that sticks most people, and that is 2 things. The grind. You just got to be willing to work harder than somebody else. You're going to lose sleep. You're going to give up some other sacrifices. Just make sure you're sacrificing the right things. You know, so the grind. And the second one is just you got to keep doing it, you know. Most people don't fail, they quit. And that sounds like a cliche, but it is 100% true. Most people quit. They don't fail. They quit. Or they never get started, which is the worst thing.
Yeah, we often hear about that, 3 feet from gold, right? That concept. Well, Byron, thank you so very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
On this call.
Thank you very, very much. It's been
Yeah.
a great
Let's
time.
do it again, huh?
Yeah, for sure, because there's so much more to your story that we just didn't get to today. But with that all said, we have to bring you on back. But let us say our goodbyes and thank our viewers for joining us and allowing us to share you with the world. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
Blessings.